Welcome to Over the BS with Blair and Sadé. We are so excited for this particular episode because we're just over the stigma of mental health in the Black community. So it's time to talk about it.
Yes, definitely talking about it, having an open conversation, and we have a medical professional guest to give us a little bit more details of how we kind of can end the stigma ourselves.
Yeah, so without further ado, Blair, can you introduce her? I know she's someone that you've known for a long time.
Oh, yes. So today we have Miss Jasmine Young, aka my sister, just so you know. But she is a master's level social worker with a dual master's in public administration. She's also a case manager at a local hospital in West Michigan. And she's the owner of Thrive Counseling and Consulting. Hi, sis.
Hi. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, because we really wanted a medical professional to give us some insight, because there's a lot of things that me and Sadé have questions about ourselves and the public, I think. And first of all, why is there a stigma regarding mental health, especially in the African-American community?
Yeah, I think stigma around mental health, it's across all populations, but especially in the African-American community. And I would urge you guys to just think about your own experiences and your own families and think about some of the things that they've said to you in regards to mental health, or if anyone around you has ever mentioned anything that might be about mental health, just some of the things that you've heard. And that can kind of give you an idea of where that stigma comes from, because a lot of it does come from our parents, from our grandparents. And I think that one of the bigger issues is just a lack of information. It's not something that we've talked about for very long. We're starting to talk about it a little bit more now, which is great, but there's still definitely a gap in information. And so if we can get that information out there, I think people can start to be more open about talking about it. Another thing that has happened just historically is that the Black church and faith affiliations play a really big role in this community. I think that's that's the place where we go to talk about important issues. If you think about like politics and voting, what are the major institutions that kind of get people out to vote or to motivate people? That comes from the church.
It's funny, you would think it'd be separate but equal, but somehow faith really incorporates into politics and health. It's pretty incredible to think about it that way.
Well, is it fair to say that because a lot of people seek faith instead of just seeking the maybe a treatment that they actually need, but they've been kind of raised to kind of rely on the church more than maybe a medical professional?
For sure. I think even if you look at your own friends, if they post something about mental health or they post something about something that they're going through, if you read the comments on those, a lot of them are going to say, I'm going to pray for you, or just pray to get through this, that's a valid point. However, you don't see comments about, let me find you a counselor, or do you need help right now immediately? Do you want me to call someone? Do you want me to come and get you? You don't see those things very often. Usually we do weigh heavily on that one skill that we have. And we do kind of leave out the professionals in that conversation, which there's a whole nother conversation about why we do that.
Do you think there could also be that stigma around, seeking help also makes it seem like you're less capable? Maybe, you're insane, because, if you look, movies make you seem like you're crazy when you're seeking some sort of mental health. And, sometimes it looks like, oh, you're weaker in your faith because you aren't able to handle it with just between you and God. So do you see that a lot in your side?
For sure. I think that especially, men in general, not just Black men, but especially Black men, they are supposed to be these strong figures. We tell little boys, don't cry, toughen up. And so what messages does that tell them about seeking help and talking about things that are hard for us to talk about? Women, Black women especially, we need to be strong. A lot of times we are the head of the household due to other structural oppression issues. But yeah, we can't look weak. Even if you look at like domestic violence, which has a whole mental health component to it. When Black women come into mental health shelters, often they'll say, we were fighting, when really, no, you were being beat up. but the way that we phrase it in our brain so that we're not victims, you can see that across many different population in groups that are having these problems like domestic violence. And so, yeah, definitely we have to be strong all the time, and we can't look weak even for a moment. And so it doesn't give us permission to access help or tell people that we're not doing well.
Yeah, and I feel like it's so interesting that you brought up family structure and like the whole strength, because I feel like Black people as a people, we're always like, we're strong, we need to be strong because of what we've come from, what we've been through, like, you know, systematic oppression, going back to like slavery and all of that. And, you know, especially women being caretakers of the family, you want to also help put up that front, but then it's not doing well for us in terms of mental health or even like physical health, because you hear about all these health issues Black women are, you know, dealing with in hospitals when with childbirth, because there's a stigma that we're so strong. And you know, we think that being strong is supposed to help us, but then it's in the reverse, where it's not our fault, but other races or non-Black people of color will even see it as, oh, well, you guys are so strong, you don't need the extra medicine, or you can handle the pain that you're going through. And then in turn, maybe you're aggressive when no, you could be struggling mentally. And it ends up always almost fatal for us. You know, the high rates of mortality during childbirth, children getting shot by police officers. So I think this is like such a serious issue, and I'm so glad that you're like bringing this up, that, you know, our family structure, the way we think about strength, we kind of need to maybe change that around that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I think conversation and giving people spaces like this to talk about these things, I think that that's the first step to ending some of this stigma, for sure.
And I also wonder, how should we approach therapy? Because I mean, again, like we were saying, you know, oh, you seem crazy if you're getting therapy, or let's be real, sometimes it comes off as like, oh, you know, white people do therapy, you know, just like it was where it's like white people eat healthy, Black people don't eat healthy. No, we need to take care of ourselves. So how should we start thinking about therapy, approaching it, you know, getting access to it?
Yeah, I think that first you have to kind of address our reluctance to get therapy. So, what are some of those barriers that are holding us back? Whether that's not feeling connected to the therapists that are in our community or not knowing how to access them.
On that note, really quick, I gotta say,
Mhm.
I do feel like personally, like thinking, I've never had therapy before, but I kind of, just by you bringing that up, I'm just wondering to myself, like, how comfortable would I be trying to open up to a therapist that doesn't look like me? Because I'm wondering if they'll even, again, be able to empathize. So I think that's such a good point that you brought up. At the same time, like, even maybe I have to look in the community and try and find someone who maybe looks more like me so I could feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think that. So I've supervised many interns who were getting ready to do therapy, and we did a lot of work on how people might perceive us, because I think that that's important. And it's not their job um, to like us or feel connected. It's kind of our job to put ourselves out there, like, you know, maybe I'm not the best one for you. Maybe we're not clicking. I can definitely tell when someone doesn't feel comfortable with me. And I think that it takes the therapist to kind of bring that up and have that conversation and try to lead you in the right direction. Especially with kids, I think little girls and little boys, they often need someone that looks like them in order to feel comfortable. We're seeing that in studies with kids who don't have teachers that look like them, and how those relationships are. I think that it's the same for therapists. Having someone that looks like your mom or your dad or your grandma can add a whole nother level of comfort and help with that rapport building. And so I think that that's important. I also have found, when working with young men who have experienced trauma, so seeing friends getting shot and killed, just terrible traumas that they're dealing with every single day, that they don't even consider trauma at this point because it's so normal. Um, Having someone, if they walk into a room and it's someone that does not look like them, and they can kind of tell they don't come from the same place I do, they haven't seen the same things, they're
Yeah.
not going to understand. And whether that's true or not, is kind of irrelevant. It's that perception that matters. Because the therapist might be well equipped to deal with all of those things. They should be anyway. But we know that that's not always the case. And so it's that perception that's important, because they need to be able to feel comfortable opening up and talking to them. And so I have in the past, when looking for counselors for people that I've been referring out and whatnot, I've asked them, are you more comfortable with a man or a woman? Does race matter? Does their background matter? Some people want to talk about spirituality and prayer and stuff in therapy. Some people don't. Some agencies are gonna be doing those kinds of things, and some aren't. And so I think that just asking those questions is important, and knowing that if you don't like your counselor, you can switch. You don't have to stick with the same one, and don't let it stop you from finding another one, because we're all different.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up, because I never really thought of finding it's always, when you think about it, it's like you're kind of stuck with someone. You never think that you can find a therapist that is like beneficial just for you. Like you can pick them the way that you want, but there's an actual like filter system that you can have someone that can directly relate to your life, or someone that you just know that you'll feel comfortable with. But I'm happy you brought up trauma too, because it kind of goes in with my question of what are some signs of mental health issues? And you brought up trauma or like PTSD. So what are some things that maybe you've seen or that you just know about that are some key signs that there might be some mental health issues?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's important for us to mention that mental health affects our community at higher rates due to more oppression and things that just happen to us and are not our fault. And so I think that it's important to mention that we are going to see it more in our community, although we don't talk about it as much. And so a lot of these things don't go addressed, and they kind of can spiral out of control. So then you have to look at trauma in our community. So if you think about sexual abuse of children, I just in the last couple of months have had several men reach out to me and say that they were sexually abused as children and they hadn't ever talked to anyone about it. And I'm not their counselor. They just kind of reached out to me and said it because they'd seen what I was doing in the community and thought I was a good person for that. And so I think that just some of the things that we don't talk about, the shootings, divorce, not having a father in the home, having a father in prison or a mother in prison, witnessing crimes, just some of these things, watching the news
Yeah.
right now. And so if you find yourself replaying some of those things in your head often, having lots of nightmares, I think some of the most common mental health issues we hear about are depression and anxiety. And so feeling really sad or bogged down, sleeping a lot, anxiety, a lot of times you feel that in your body. So your chest hurting, shortness of breath, kids have stomach aches a lot. And so there are many different things that you can see in it. It's different for everyone. So it's important to just learn your body and learn more about mental health so that you know what's happening when it's happening. I work at the hospital, and so we see tons of people come into the emergency room thinking they're having heart problems. Most of the time it ends up being anxiety, and it feels like heart problems, which again makes you have more anxiety if you're thinking you're having heart problems. And so just kind of learning your body and having that counselor there so that you can have that person to talk to, like, because if someone came to an appointment to see me, I could have explained, that sounds more like anxiety. Let's talk about some different things that we can do to try to help with those symptoms. And so I think identifying the populations that are having the most trauma, flooding those communities with services and people that can help them and different resources, and that could go a long way, but it all starts with those conversations.
Yeah.
Is a fear? I'm sorry, Sadé.
It's okay.
It was just like a tag-on question for it.
Same. Well, kind of going back to a point you made just right before is, what would you advise for any, millennial or maybe someone younger or even older in our community that's trying to tell a parent, trying to tell a friend that they think they are depressed, they think they might have anxiety. And, sometimes you get that pushback, like, no, you're not, you need to go do something, or, whatever the trade-off is, or whatever parents tell them. What would you say is a way a healthy way of trying to reach out, maybe break that into your family if you really think that you might be dealing with something rough.
Yeah. I think that what's important is to seek out those people in your life that will have the most understanding, even if that's limited. So that could be a teacher, that could be a professor, that could, someone that you trust, and using those people to help you have those conversations. Because I think that sometimes and this is a very vulnerable subject that we're talking about. And so literally, if you're sitting in a room and someone's not validating your feelings, that could be life threatening for you. Because I mean, right now, if you think of suicide rates, they're out of control. And so I think that having that extra person that is your cheerleader, or it could be your therapist if you already have one, or if you find one yourself, having those people help you have those conversations and figure out what that safety net is. Because I think that sometimes there's just going to be certain people you're not going to be able to have in your safety plan because they're not going to be helpful to you. But I think that having a plan is important, and in many cases our lives depend on it.
Do you think that there's just a fear in diagnosis itself, just someone being scared of just being diagnosed with something based on maybe their family structure?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but I remember as a child hearing all the time, like, he gets a check. Have you guys heard that? Where if you got someone that gets a disability check or something for having a mental health concern. And so I think that just having that fear about having those resources in place and what that might mean about yourself and how people think of you, I think that it definitely can be scary. I also would like to stress that in recent years, we have been really, really careful about diagnosing people. I think in the past, we diagnosed too much. And so we've been really cautioned about just placing diagnoses on people. If you think about like ADHD, tons of kids used to get diagnosed with ADHD. Now we're more careful because we don't just want to be medicating kids for ADHD when actually they're just experiencing trauma, and those are behaviors that are coming out and they look a lot like ADHD. And so we, as professionals, we've become a lot more careful about that. And so I would hope that when you go in to talk to a professional, you can have that conversation about what they plan on diagnosing you with, to make sure that you're comfortable with it, and so that you understand it, because understanding your diagnosis can be a major key in how you handle it and manage those different stressors.
Wait, so I'm kind of surprised. So you can actually ask, like, oh, I'm being like, what am I being diagnosed with? This is what you're diagnosed with. Because I just feel like maybe it's because we both come from like a Hollywood background, Blair and I, that I always see like sensationalized movies, like you're this and that's the only thing you are. And like, whatever diagnosis they're planning to give you, that's it. I didn't know that you could ask and maybe have more of a discussion rather than just like, oh, you're this.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I think that it should be a discussion. If when I'm working with children, if I'm diagnosing a child with something, I want that parent to know that. I want them to be involved in that discussion so that they can say, wait, you have it all wrong. Now, obviously, the professional has, they can do the diagnosis still, but there should still be that conversation happening. And also, diagnoses are they change. I can diagnose someone with something one day, and then after I meet with them for 6 months, be like, oh no, that's not what that is. This is what it is. And so, yeah, it has to be an ongoing conversation. Definitely.
And on this topic where we're talking about being more open, when you see celebrities opening up about their disorders, do you think that actually helps our communities at all? Blair and I were kind of like grappling with this idea of whether like Selena Gomez coming out with with her disorder, it's
bipolar disorder, yeah.
And Mariah Carey, do you think these celebrities coming out helps our community at all?
I think that it does, because it brings up the conversation. I would just want to know what their motives are behind it, I guess, and what they do after that. Are they providing people with resources or telling them what they did to deal with that diagnosis? So I don't think that it's necessarily hurting anything. I would want to know
More or
what their
less
motive.
set like a good example. Yeah, well, at
Yeah,
least shout out to Taraji for creating a whole foundation and really trying to get, light a fire under
yeah,
our community. So shout out to her for that.
I just had a question about, I see a lot of talk on Twitter, especially that like one of my friends has having a really hard time in quarantine with mental issues. Do you have any advice, or do you have anything that you have told some of your clients regarding just the state that we're in regarding the virus?
yeah. I actually, so for Thrive, my counseling business, I did a video about different coping skills that you can use during this time because we are kind of limited. A lot of times we're not seeing our therapist face to face. We're not getting out seeing people, and so even the people that already had mental health issues and concerns, people that didn't have those before are now having some of the same issues. I think everyone's kind of has a level of anxiety right now, because we're in the unknown, right? And that causes fear and anxiety. And so I would just say to make sure that you're doing your self-care, taking time for yourself, planning ahead, keeping a schedule. There's tons of things that you can be doing right now to kind of ease up on um, those different symptoms that we might be experiencing. Spend time outside, FaceTime friends. And if for some reason you feel like you cannot manage it, I would definitely tell people to reach out for help because we do Zoom meetings. We can, you can Zoom a counselor right now. Many states have different crisis lines that you can call just related to mental health during COVID. There's tons of apps that you can get. Headspace, for example, Michigan has a special Headspace program right now just for COVID. And then lastly, if you feel like you're not safe, then I would encourage you to go to the emergency room, even though the emergency rooms are not the place that anybody wants to be right now because they have germs. But I would just encourage
Take a
you to
mask.
go there.
Take a
Yeah.
mask.
Yeah. Take a mask. I'm there every day.
Yeah.
They're, at least it'll be fast right now because they're not super busy. But yeah, I would just encourage you to go there. And what they'll do is they'll ask you a series of questions and they'll just evaluate whether they feel like you're safe right now. And if not, then they're going to try to help you. And I think that can be really scary for people because it feels like you're losing a sense of control or you're having, people ask you questions that you're not used to being asked. But I would encourage you to still do that because that's better than what the alternative might be.
Yeah.
And how do we end the stigma then? If you have any, I guess, recommendations, steps we should be doing, yeah, I guess just put it out there. Anything you think of that we can really try to mobilize our communities to accept that it's okay to have this and to deal with it instead of letting it sit dormant.
Yeah, I think that I kind of like to take the grassroots approach to things when you're talking about making major changes, especially in a certain culture. So I would encourage us to talk to the people that are living in these communities. So, for example, I'm getting ready to do a panel series on Black men and mental health, and I'm going right to that community. I'm not an expert on Black men because I'm not one, so I need to talk to them and see what they need, because I think that a lot of times we go into places and we try to implement things that we think they need, but that's not what's going to help them. And so I would just encourage us to have these conversations with people, reach out to people that are struggling, having more of these different podcasts and panel series and all of these things just to get people talking, but not forgetting the people that maybe are not the type of people that usually tune into podcasts or go to panels. You need to actually go to those neighborhoods and talk to them and figure out what they need.
Where can people get help, and how can some of us raise more awareness revolving mental health?
Yeah. So I think right now social media is huge as far as raising awareness, especially because none of us can leave our houses. So just making sure that you're sharing accurate information. There's lots of I mean, you guys probably already know there's lots of information out there that's not super accurate or helpful. And so just make sure that if you post an article, say about like suicide rates or something, make sure that you're also writing in there how people can get help if they need it. Um, Again, going back to like that domestic violence, sexual assault stuff, make sure that you're figuring out where the resources are in your community so that you can also share that information when you're sharing articles and whatnot so that people know where to go. And then sharing those things and being more open about this kind of leaves yourself open to people communicating with you about their own issues because they know that you know something about it. And I think that that's super accurate in our community because people don't necessarily reach out to me or my business page to get help. A lot of times they're just like texting me on the phone, like as a friend. And I think that that's really important and it opens you up to that. But as far as finding an actual counselor, one important thing is to make sure that you're calling the number on the back of your insurance card if you have health insurance. Because they are going to be able to tell you what therapists in your area accept your insurance. Because another barrier to counseling is that it's typically not free. Unfortunately, I wish that I could give it away for free, but that would get me in lots of trouble.
And also, it kind of has the stigma around it that it's really expensive, and it seems like it is.
It is kind of. And depending on where you are, I'm sure that it's different rates, but I would probably say that it's around 100-ish, but that could be way higher in some places and lower in others. But that's a lot for people, especially right now. People aren't really working. So I would just encourage people, if you have medical insurance, to call that number on the back of the card so that you can have your insurance pay for it. Lots of places have organizations or systems called community mental health, which is typically where you would go if you have like Medicaid or a state insurance, and they will typically see people for free. However, you have to have a certain level of mental health effects in order to go to those types of places, but they can evaluate you and then send you to the right places. And then I would also encourage people to talk to their doctors, whatever doctor they normally see, because you usually trust that person and you can have those real conversations like, you know me, you know that this is the kind of stuff that I need to talk about to someone. So I need you to send me to someone that's going to understand and you think it's going to be a good fit. Also asking friends who they see, that can be really, really helpful.
Have you heard of the app Talkspace by any chance?
I have heard of that. I haven't done much research into it, but I believe that's one where you would like text a therapist. Yeah. So that's another option. Yeah. I
think it's free.
Is it free?
I believe it's free, at least some of it. Okay. Yeah.
That's good for some people. Some people, I think everybody's different. Some people need it to be face to face. Some people are okay with Zoom or on the phone, and then texting. I could imagine that would be really good for like younger people or millennials who are really good with technology.
Or someone with just social anxiety or just doesn't feel.
Yeah. And it could just be like something you do for a little while. And then when you feel more comfortable going into somewhere or seeking help other ways. But yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can do it. Also, Psychology Today, you can type in like your insurance information, your city, and then they can give you a list of counselors. Typically, people will have a picture and then they'll have a description of the things that they specialize in. And then you can choose that way, which that's what I typically have done with people in the past, is just gone there. And then we look through people's descriptions. You can see what school they went to, where they work, all that kind of stuff. So that can be really helpful. And then again, if all else fails and you don't feel safe, the emergency room, wherever you are, they should be able to take care of you there and get you where you need to go.
Well, Jazz, thank you so much for taking the time. I learned so much, especially kind of you digging into the family structure. I think that one really, I never really thought of. So I really appreciate you kind of going in depth with that and also talking about trauma and how important that kind of affects the mental health in our community.
Yeah, and you brought up so many things that we hadn't even considered, like how to approach mental health, how to think about it, that you can ask questions and actually be involved as a parent or as a friend. So thank you so much for just obviously bringing more awareness, telling us about access. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys for opening up this space to talk about this important topic.
Of course. And where can we find like your information if someone wants to book an appointment with you?
Yeah, so I'm actually located in Muskegon, Michigan. So obviously, if you're in the area, I would encourage you to reach out because I do lots of other things besides just counseling, different, like I said, panel series, different fundraising events, all that kind of good stuff. So if you want to reach out and be involved in any of that, you can find me on Facebook. My business is called Thrive Counseling and Consulting LLC.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sis. We appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much.
You guys stay healthy.
You too.
You too. Thank you. Well, if you guys make sure you guys follow us on our social media, we are Over the BS Show. I'm Blair.
I'm Sadé.
And we'll see you on the next episode.
Next week.